How many of you have heard of the tennis player Roger Federer? Oh, great. I'm glad. Okay. And my second question is, how many of you have heard of Martina Hingis? Oh, fantastic. That's good. Okay. So 2013 was one of only 2 years in the previous 10 when Federer did not win a Grand Slam. It was also the year when Hingis reappeared in my life. It ought to have felt like good old times, except that it didn't. In March, my husband told me that he was moving out of the apartment that was given to us by his organization, and I didn't exactly jump with joy at that. I was left homeless, and I had to move to my younger sister Archana's house till I found an alternative. The move was sudden, like the transfers that we experienced when my father used to work with the Department of Customs and Excise. The first transfer I remember distinctly is the one when we moved from Delhi to Madras, when I gave up Kathak classes I really liked to take up classes in Carnatic music that I really didn't enjoy. Tennis by then was something I started enjoying, but tennis is an expensive sport, and I was having lack of time because I was singing, so I never played the sport. So I continued to watch many matches, I quietly read about them, and I took pride in my ability to be able to manage instability, which is caused by moving from one city to another, one house to another. If a month can be considered one set of tennis, I moved from being a long-time single woman to a married woman in 2 sets. As hurried as the wedding was, it was still an exception in my largely unhurried life. I had a partner to last my lifetime, plenty of wins to plan for. But the problem was that my partner never really showed up to play. And when he did, he moved to the other side of the court to play against me. I'm not a quitter. I don't take time out. So the marriage proceeded in its ugly, sickening pace. From marriage to separation, it took 5 whole sets. It went the distance, a full 5, like great tennis matches often go. But the outcome here was never under any doubt. At Archana's house, my years of sound sleep gave way to a whole new routine. I remember so many nights when crying was the last thing I did before I fell asleep. And when I woke up a few hours later, the hours would change on a daily basis. Crying was the first sensation I experienced. I think more than anything else, I was upset at the fact that I was crying in front of my younger sister, somebody whom I was protecting all my life, and now the roles had been reversed. I lost 5 kilos between March and April. Now, I have never dieted in my life. And here I was, following what I call the divorce diet to the T. Now, even though I could never narrate the full story, there are details I didn't wish to share, which were originally meant just for my husband. I had to narrate it all the same in bits and pieces to several people. It started off with the lawyers. If there are any in the audience, please forgive the stereotype, but I had a very, very tough time finding a sane one who wasn't aggressive. A chance phone call with my batchmate, we call him Gary, opened up a new path for me. He gave me the contact of a lawyer. Archana came with me when I went to meet Helen for the first time. I found myself staring at a senior citizen when I had imagined a glamorous young woman when I heard her name. But Helen suited me perfectly. She didn't want to fight for the sake of it. She was reasonable in every sense. And she taught me that advocates and lawyers are not the same. Once that was sorted, the world of friends, acquaintances, relatives, colleagues, all that had to be dealt with. And I'm referring to these categories really loosely because for me, many colleagues are dear friends and many relatives are acquaintances. Now, given the sheer number of people I know, the chatter left me really tired. And I sought solace in my private blog, a space I had created for myself a couple of weeks before the wedding took place. It was meant to help me deal with a huge argument that had taken place then. And I visited the blog over 500 times, 500 nights of winter, if you will. I also had a notebook in Archana's house where I would write in whenever I felt like it. Both the blog and the notebook are trashed now. Now, getting it all out is very, very important for anybody who goes through a divorce or any traumatic event. You have to recap things. You have to see where things have gone wrong. You have to think about things that you don't want to think about. And most importantly, you have to see how bad things really are before you start moving ahead. Some like to talk through all of this. For me, my preference was clearly to write it all out. Either way, it is bad medicine for sure. So while all of this was happening with me, Federer was really struggling in the second half of the season. By this, I mean he was ranked 7th in the world, which is incomprehensible for a Federer fan because I'm used to seeing him as number 2 or number 3 for a few months here and there, but not 7. Not in the past 10 years at least. His back trouble coincided with my aggravated back pain. His misery on centre court when he lost in the second round in Wimbledon that year coincided with the misery I was experiencing in the centre court of my life. As things turned out, Martina Hingis separated from her husband that year. Now, Hingis and I go back a really long way. I came back from school in '97 once to watch her semi-final match against Anna Kournikova at Wimbledon. Hingis went on to win the match that year, and she won Wimbledon as well. She was playing tennis as a professional, and she's just 1 year elder to me. And I was working through class notes on relative velocity and mathematical induction at that point. We had really nothing in common. But now, she was going through exactly something that I was going through. And it's almost as if she and Federer had decided that they were going to remind the world that they are mortal after all. That they have problems and setbacks, conflicts and injuries, the kind that you can see and the kind you can't see, just like me. Now, right through the marriage, I was feeling like a watered down, very constrained, inauthentic version of myself, a version that I could really not recognize. Since I don't believe in going back in time, going back to what I called my original self was not available anymore to me. I didn't know what I was going to become, and the loss of my personality left me really scared. In my scared state, I waited out the separation period. I refused to fall for the pressure to file for the divorce in my birthday month of all months, and I filed in December 2013. It was via mutual consent. One day before we were to file, his advocate sent an email to me, the only email I have preserved from my marriage, and I'm going to read out one line from there. Both parties have agreed to not to communicate with each other through texts, blogs, phone calls, emails, or any other route for any matter whatsoever in the present or in the future. It was game, set, match. If you've seen Federer win Wimbledon, or if you're a Nadal fan here, if you've seen him win the French, you might have seen him crumble to the ground in a mixture of disbelief and exhaustion and a lot of happiness. In the court I was in, the courtroom rather, the floor was tile and not grass or clay. And if it were different, I might have crumbled myself. Not in defeat, but in a strange kind of relief and maybe delight that the endless back and forth was at least finally over. My victory wasn't over him. There are absolutely no winners in something like this. But my victory was for me. Maybe I've learned that negotiation and compromise have different shades. Some of them are truly lovely. Maybe I've learned that the worst of our fears must come true for us to find and acknowledge the courage which is inside of us. Maybe I've joined a club or something, a group that has gone through something really intense together. A group that knows what it's like to be love 40 down, fight its way back to deuce, and then on from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.